Don't be afraid to have a party. You don't even need to be in the same place to have a party. All you need is something to celebrate. This video is for the party people and aspiring party people too. Today we're celebrating outdoor cooking. If you love smoky flavors, umami, and char-grilled goodness, keep watching. Coming up are 5 celebratory dishes that will make any grilling party amazing. Pair this kind of food with good wine and what you have is a family meal.
Salud. Hey guys.
Everybody's health.
Yes. Yes. And a wonderful meal here.
Welcome to Family Meal, a virtual wine tasting party. Each month I cook a 4-course meal and pair it with some fun wines. Then you get to watch as my friends tell me what they think about it all. It's July, the middle of summer. It's grilling season, so I'm serving a meal that's all about char, smoke, and high heat cooking. And the wines I've picked stand up to these full flavored dishes. There'll be 8 eaters enjoying this open flame feast with 5 recipes and 8 wine pairings. My first virtual summer grill party. As you know if you've watched before, Family Meal is about exploring food from different places and different times to understand how people make awesome food for the time and place they live in. Last month, we looked at Frida de Knight's 1973 cookbook, Date with a Dish. Frida traveled all over the country interviewing Black cooks about their dishes and recipes. The result is a book of dishes you'll love. One of last month's eaters said the soup from that meal was the best they've had in their life. That episode includes 5 dishes and 7 wine pairings. If you want to see it, click here or look below for the link. In this episode, we're riffing on recipes from Milton Williams' 1981 cookbook, The Party Book. It's perfect for what I'm doing this month. I'm throwing a grill party at 4 different homes on the same day. Milton was the caterer to the stars in Hollywood in the 70s and 80s. He was known for throwing extravagant themed parties with live performances and over-the-top decorations. He got his first catering gig when the cook at the home where he worked got sick. No other restaurant could fill in so quickly, so Williams asked for the job and his career was born. His clients included folks like 4-time Academy Award-winning composer Henry Mancini and Aaron Spelling, the producer of the original Charlie's Angels, and many other famous people and dignitaries. But his cookbook isn't about throwing an extravagant gala. It's got recipes and dinner party menus that you can feed your friends with some good wine on a Sunday afternoon. And that's what inspired me about this book. I use this book to make food that's festive enough to call party food, but still doable for me, a home cook with a camera. I think this is my most exciting menu yet. Anybody who can inspire me to do that with food is someone worth learning more about. But don't take my word for it. Make these dishes yourself and tell me what you think. Comment, like, and subscribe so I can see if these recipes resonate with you too. And make sure you hit the bell so you'll be notified of all Winosity's future videos. Ready to hear what's on the menu this month? Let's get into it. Salsify is the starting point this month. Yes, salsify. It's a root that tastes a bit like oysters. It'll be great in a dip with some smoked sour cream, all slathered on a bit of fluffy flatbread. If you watched a few months ago, you may have seen the Edna Lewis episode. She had a buttered salsify recipe in her book, so I'm combining her ingredients with Milton's menu and my grill theme to create something new. A dip in bread is a classic appetizer, right? This bread course will be great with sparkling wine. We'll be enjoying this dip with 2 chilled French cremants. Oysters and sparkling wine are a classic combo. We'll see if this oyster-flavored vegetable works with these bright wines too. Next, there's an herbaceous grilled pork roll. It has fennel, a curry sauce, and a fresh herb salad. This dish has bright flavors plus smoky flavor from the grill. This dish will be paired with medium-bodied Pinot Noirs from California. Believe it or not, slightly chilled is the way to serve these 2 wines. I mean, it's 100 degrees outside, so putting them in the fridge for a bit is a good thing. It'll help their fruit flavors shine. I'm very excited by the main course this month. Admittedly, there's a few steps to this casserole dish. I almost decided not to make it because it takes a few days to make. I'm making cheese from scratch here, but I decided it's worth it. Why not make the food that makes you happy, that you'd be happy to serve to your friends? So I'm going for it. Okay, here's what's in the dish. It's a casserole of rutabaga gnocchi, smoked lamb, macerated tomatoes, and farmer's cheese. Each item will be made on its own, but I'll warm it at the end to get the cheese melted a bit and everything combined. The casserole will be served with a charred romaine salad. It's just what you think it is, grilled lettuce and fresh herbs and a light vinaigrette. This salad will be great next to the intense casserole. Our main course this month will be paired with 2 bold Petite Sirah. Both are from California and have the power to stand up to this smoked lamb and grilled vegetables. I know the theme of this meal is high heat, but I thought a lighter dessert would be nice to end with after all of the smoked and charred flavors. So I'm going with a blood orange pie with torched Swiss meringue. This blood orange curd is tart and sweet. The meringue is sweet and creamy and has just a hint of charred flavor, so it is in keeping with the theme, but without being overpowering. It'll be paired with 2 Swedish rosé wines. Both are sparkling. One is lightly sparkling and one is fully sparkling, and they're both Italian. Does this menu sound like a party to you? It definitely does to me, but let's see if I can pull it off well enough for my friends. Salsify has a number of fun names. Jerusalem Star and Goat's Beard are a few. But the best name, hands down, is Jack Go to Bed at Noon, because the plant's edible flowers close every afternoon. What does Jack Go to Bed at Noon taste like, you ask? The answer is oyster. So this is like a vegetarian oyster dip, and it's pretty easy to prepare. Open the cans of Salsify and drain them. Then prepare your peppers and herbs to be diced. You can chop them by hand, but I'm using a mechanical chopper. I'm not using a food processor because I don't want to mess up and have a puree. I want this to still be chunky. Next is a sour cream. This is frozen. It's hard enough that you can cut it into chunks. And I'm going to use a handheld smoker to smoke it. You can use any wood you like. I have a mix of hickory and apple today. Keep the cream in smoke for about 10 minutes. That should be enough time to infuse the flavor. Once the cream is smoked, you need to get it soft enough to mix with the rest of the ingredients. Some mayonnaise, the herbs, pepper, seasoning, and the Jack Go to Bed at Noon. Don't forget that. It's a party-worthy version of the classic seafood dip. We made this flatbread from scratch for the wine party. It's got yogurt and some flake salt. It's light, fluffy, and delicious. One of the perks of eating in person. You can also use store-bought flatbread for this dish. Just coat it in a bit of olive oil and coarse salt. Then bake it a bit to refresh it or drop it on a hot grill to get some char. Or just put this dip on a slice of toasted sandwich bread. This smoky dip is great no matter how you use it. We're having this dip with 2 Cremant. It's just sparkling wine from France that isn't from Champagne. Since this wine can be pretty much from anywhere in France and made from many types of grapes, it comes in many styles and has many flavors. But these are generally fresh wines with citrus and a bit of green apple. They're a nice counterpoint to the smoke flavor, but they also support the sharpness of the sour cream. For me, fishy flavors and briny flavors go so well with bubbles, and this vegetable is a veggie version of fish. I think it's a cool vegetarian take on a classic seafood and sparkling wine combination. But what does the eating panel have to say?
The dip is so good.
Thanks.
It's very good.
I do like the Blanc better.
Yeah, I do as well.
Yeah, it's a little fruitier and more floral, I think.
Yeah, I agree. The Blanc.
That's the second one.
I think the Limon has more bubbles. More
Yeast could be.
There's a bit for that.
Everybody loves dip, right? I think this recipe is a keeper. Smoky, a bit sour, and creamy. It's super tasty. Imagine a grilled stuffed pork chop. That's basically what this dish is. It's pork stuffed with a flavorful chutney. In California, fennel just grows on the side of the road like a weed. Yeah, it's the wild kind of fennel, but it smells great. But let me put a few fennel seeds in my garden and nothing. But I'm not mad. Fennel is delicious and makes a totally worthy chutney. First, I'll start by toasting the spices in a dry pan. Curry means different things to different people. For this recipe, it means a mix of turmeric, coriander, and cumin. You can add other spices that make sense to you, but those are the basics here. You want them to just start releasing their aromas without burning. The next step is to cook the vegetables. Start with the garlic, then add the leeks and the fennel. You want them to get good and tender. The fennel has been sliced into fairly thick slices so that you have some nice chew in the chutney. You also want to season the mix with enough salt and pepper to get everything good and savory. The next step is to add the ouzo and reduce it by half. This will create a thick sauce for the chutney. This saucy chutney is what's going to get rolled up in the pork, but you've got to get the pork ready. You can cut your tenderloin almost in half, but don't cut all the way through. This creates a butterfly tenderloin that you'll pound down into an even more tender piece of meat. Pound the butterflied pork out to about a ½ inch to 3/4 of an inch, then season both sides with salt and pepper. Next, spread out that flavorful chutney all over one side of the pork. Then roll up the pork into a roll along the short end of the loin. You should have a number of layers in your roll. Now move the roll to a pan to grill. Okay, this loin is ready for the grill. You're going to grill it for about a total of 15 minutes. That should be enough time to get a good smoky flavor on it. Now that it's cooked, it's time to plate. Once cooked, you can cut the roulade into slices. Top each slice with a bit of herb salad. You can use any herbs you have on hand. I have a bit of parsley and mint that I'm going to dress up with a bit of salt, vinegar, pepper, and oil. That goes right on top. If that's not a party dish, I don't know what is. I paired this pork with 2 Pinot Noirs from California. They're both kind of bold Pinots, but that's okay. This is grilled pork with curry after all. Both these wines are from Sonoma, but there's still a difference between the two. The first is the boldest one. It'll definitely spar with this pork dish, hopefully in a good way, to create an intense experience. The second wine is just slightly quieter. It's like that sound when 100 people are singing, but it only sounds like one. We'll see which experience my friends prefer.
I think they're both quiet, actually. They're smooth.
Yeah. I'm not normally a Pinot person, but these are pretty good, I think.
Yeah, I like
Yeah, I agree.
The 6 degrees is a little sort of peppery. Scott, you can sort of taste that spice.
Spring fennel chutney is so delicious.
Yeah, great.
Thank you.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, who doesn't love grilled pork and red wine? I think my friends were ready for a big punch, and I think that Pinot gave it to them. Are you ready for a dish that's so good that I was willing to take 3 days to make it? Well, I think it's good at least. Each component has to be made separately. Then you put it all together at the end. It's basically a fancied up casserole. The ingredient that takes the longest time is the cheese, but most of that time is aging. The rest of the recipe really isn't that hard. You start the cheese by heating salted milk over medium-low heat to a heavy simmer for about 30 minutes. While it's cooking, you want to stir it constantly, never let it get to a boil. After 30 minutes, turn off the heat and add vinegar slowly while still stirring. Keep stirring for about 10 minutes until curds form. Once you have a good number of curds, strain off the liquid into a towel-lined sieve. If you don't have a towel, you can use a clean but wet pillowcase. Squeeze the remaining liquid out of the curds with the towel. Get just as much liquid as you can out of there. I'm going to age this for a few days, but you can go for longer if you like. The next step is to smoke the lamb. I've made this recipe before, maybe about 10 years ago, and it was a hit. We'll see what people think today. We want a nice and juicy piece of lamb from this. In my opinion, marinating the lamb helps keep it juicy. I'll make the marinade by grinding some spices until a paste forms. Then I mix the spice paste into some olive oil. That's the marinade. These shanks are pretty lean, but if you use a fattier cut of lamb, you may want to remove some of the fat. Okay, I take the marinade and rub it all over the lamb. I'm gonna let the lamb marinate for about an hour. You could go as long as a day if you wanted. After the lamb is marinated, I'll smoke it for about 4 hours at 250 degrees. Doesn't that look amazing? It's glistening and covered in tasty spices and herbs. I'm gonna chunk it up so it's ready to be added to the casserole, and I'll make sure to save some of the juice from the lamb. The pasta I'm making next will soak up all that sauce. On the menu for today it says sweet pasta. I put that because it's shorter and I was running out of space. There's a lot of ingredients in this dish. But growing up, this veggie was called rutabaga. It's literally a cross between a turnip and cabbage and tastes just like that. Kind of like a Brussels sprout met a radish and fell in love. My mom would serve rutabaga up like mashed potatoes or in cubes with some butter and salt. But today we're going to use it to make a gnocchi. Start by wrapping the rutabaga, potato, and garlic in foil. Wrap them separately and bake them until they're tender. The garlic will be done in 40 minutes. The potato will take about an hour. The rutabaga will be done in 90 minutes. After they're cooked, mash the roasted vegetables with seasoning and a beaten egg. After that's all combined, add the flour in batches until a dough forms. Roll the dough flat about ½ an inch thick. I'm using a floured cutter too to keep the gnocchi even. Then I'm cutting them into quarters. Now that these are all formed up, I'll fry them in batches. It only takes 3 to 4 minutes to cook them, and they're golden brown fluffy pillows. The last component of the casserole is the macerated cherry tomatoes. This is super easy. If you have small tomatoes, all you do is prick each tomato about 3 times and drop them in some balsamic vinegar. The holes help the balsamic penetrate into the flesh. But I have larger tomatoes, so I'm quartering them. Let that sit for at least 20 minutes, but not so long that the tomatoes get soggy. This component adds acidity to the dish. Okay, let's put it all together. Right before serving, combine all of the ingredients in a casserole pan and heat them up a bit. About 15 to 20 minutes at 350 degrees should be enough. This will get everything steamy, and the natural juices from the lamb and the creamy cheese will melt a bit to bring everything together. I think it's going to be delicious. And here it is. I think that looks amazing. Yes, it's a casserole, but this isn't your everyday casserole. It's a casserole fit for a feast, and we're serving it with a salad. This salad has got a bit of charred flavor and some fresh herbs. I'll start the salad by making the dressing and marinade. The dressing is simple: salt, pepper, vinegar, and a bit of oil. Then there's the marinade for the lettuce, made by mixing the other half of the oil, salt, and pepper. It helps the lettuce to not dry out into a crisp while it's grilling. After coating the lettuce, grill the heads for 1 to 2 minutes on each side until grill marks appear. After the lettuce cools, cut it into bite-sized pieces. Do the same with the fresh herbs, but if the leaves are small enough, you don't have to cut them. Then mix all of this in a bowl. I think this salad is best served cold. It helps the fresh flavors of the herbs pop and is a nice contrast to the meaty casserole. I'm serving these dishes with 2 very aggressive Petite Sirah. Both are from California and both are big reds. They're also slightly spicy and oaky. To bring down the intensity a bit, I'm going to aerate and decant these to round out the flavors some. Still, these wines will have tannin that's a bit drying in the mouth. Drying your mouth out might not sound great, but when you're eating oily lamb, creamy cheese, and vegetables coated in oil, the drying sensation will be nice. And the spicy notes in the wine will add character when you have wine with the food. At least that's my thought, but we'll see what my friends think.
I love lamb.
Yeah, me too.
Very good.
Thanks.
So good.
And that smokiness is there. Lovely.
Thanks.
Really good.
Personally, the Angel's Petite for me.
Okay.
This dish.
It really did. They did mellow a lot from iterating them. When I first had them, they were very, very tannic.
Yeah.
Made the sides of your tongue kind of curl up.
To me, that's what the addiction is kind of like for me, but the other one seems smoother for me.
That was a powerful course. Big wines and smoked meat. Very satisfying. Now for something a bit lighter and sweet at the end. I wanted to stay in the high heat theme, but have a dessert that's still refreshing. So I'm making a blood orange tart with torched Swiss meringue. There's the tartness of the citrus in this recipe, with just a hint of smoke and char in the meringue. I'll start with the crust. It's sweet and buttery. The first step is to sift the dry ingredients into a bowl. Dice the frozen butter into about 1/2-inch cubes and begin mixing that into the dry ingredients until you have small clumps that stick together. When you get about the consistency of graham cracker crumbs, you're all set. Just add a bit of water to bring the dough together. Roll out the crust to the size of your pan. Try to get it as even as you can. Then freeze the crust for about an hour. After that, you bake it for 25 minutes at 350 degrees. Okay, I've got that looking good. I'll come back to it later. While the crust is coming together, you can work on the blood orange filling. Bring together cornstarch, sugar, salt, and water. Bring this to a boil on medium heat while whisking constantly. Reduce it to a simmer to thicken. Once thickened, remove from the heat. Next, beat the egg yolks. Slowly add spoonfuls of the thickened filling to the egg yolks to temper them. Finally, combine all the ingredients and simmer for 4 minutes until the yolks are cooked. Add the blood orange juice, lemon zest, and butter at the end. Next, pour the filling into the pie crust. The last step is the meringue. You're going to create a steam bath. Fill a large pot with water and bring to a gentle simmer. Combine the egg whites, Sugar, salt, and cream of tartar in a bowl over the steaming water for 10 minutes. After 10 minutes, whip this mixture in an electric stand mixer until stiff peaks form. This will take about 5 minutes. Now we're ready to finish this pie off. Some recipes say to pipe the meringue, but I'm just going to pour it on top and shape it nicely with the back of a spoon. It might take a few rounds of shaping to get it really looking nice, but I'm committed. This is a feast after all. Once you have a shape you like, we'll bake this at 325 degrees for about 20 minutes. That should get the top looking good and golden. Doesn't that look delicious? I'm serving this pie with 2 rosés from Italy. Both are sparkling, but one is just slightly sparkling. The other is fully sparkling. I'm looking for a bright, high acid and fruity wine. That should pair nicely with this blood orange curd. These wines are tangy, just like the curd. Let's see what my friends think.
The pie is very good. It has a lot of its own sweetness. That's why I think I like the dolce with it.
Yeah. This one was advertised as sweet, but
The Castello holds up better to the actual dessert, I think.
yeah.
I would agree.
Oh, I prefer the Castello. I know, but it feels, it's more, to me, it's more, I just like drinking it. It's very fruity and
Very
so good.
good crust.
Thanks.
I think that was a great way to end a grill party. What about you? So there you have it. I made 5 dishes inspired by Milton Williams' 1980 cookbook, The Party Book. I made salsify and smoked cream dip with bread, a pork roulade with curry fennel chutney, a smoked lamb casserole with farmer's cheese, and a blood orange meringue pie. Milton Williams' cookbook really got me into a celebratory mood. Many of the recipes will be familiar to you if you've ever cooked food from the 80s. It's the kind of food my mom cooked for small family events or weekend picnics. But it's also possible to reimagine these recipes for a wine party. That's what I did here today. But you don't have to wait for a wine party. There's always something to celebrate. It doesn't have to be a big event or even a holiday. I say find something to celebrate every day. I think I'm gonna do that too. A charred romaine salad with macerated tomatoes and a few bits of cheese would be a great and healthy celebratory meal you can whip up any day. As for the wines, I'd have this salad with the Blanc de Blanc. That would be a nice choice for me. This wine was very floral and great on a hot summer day. This was my favorite sparkling, but the Limoux was also a hit. Both are great wines for a celebration. If you're a Pinot Noir fan, the 2 we tasted today were excellent, as per the eaters. You can't go wrong with either, but I lean towards the 6 degrees. They're both fruity, but big enough to stand up to grilled flavors. So that was episode 5 of Family Meal and our wine pairings. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, like and subscribe. Make sure you hit the bell to get notified about upcoming episodes. And don't forget to share Family Meal with your friends. If you want these recipes, you can find them on the blog at winosity.com, where you'll find other food and wine pairings. And you'll also find the Winosity app there, where you can keep track of the good wines you discover out in the world and get wine recommendations based on your preferences. I hope you'll join us in late August for the next episode. I'll be cooking recipes from Barbara Smith's 1999 cookbook, Rituals and Celebrations. Her life was very eclectic. There's so much to say about her, but I'll just draw a couple of analogies to suggest the kind of person we'll be drawing inspiration from. She's been called the Black Martha Stewart. In the past, you may have called her a Renaissance woman. In the 2000s, she might have been referred to as a slashdot entrepreneur. Today, you'd call Smith a lifestyle influencer, and she'd probably have millions of Instagram followers to prove it. She was a model, restaurateur, and a TV talk show host. She also had a home decor line and a successful series of cookbooks. She did so much that I'm sure there will be a lot to inspire us for the August episode. Thanks for watching, folks. Bye. I'd love love special occasion food. You know those dishes that mark important rituals and events? These are indulgent dishes, made from scratch and made with love. If you need a dose of once-a-year kind of cooking, this video is for you. Today, we're having a reunion. Have you had your family reunion yet this year? No? Then join ours. Anybody that eats at my table is family. Coming up are 5 crave-worthy dishes worthy of your next family get-together. Pair this kind of food with good wine, and what you have is a family meal. Welcome to Family Meal, a virtual wine tasting party. Every month I cook a 4-course meal and pair it with some fun wines. Then you get to watch as my friends tell me what they think about it all. It's the hottest month of the year. It's so hot that most people take this month off from their typical events. Social gatherings usually grind to a halt. But I wanted to keep going because it's important to stay connected during the pandemic, but also because I'm developing a new habit here, a new ritual through Family Meal. So I can't stop now. Plus, the food this month will be so good. We're doing a virtual wine party across 4 houses, so we rounded up the care packages and dropped them off to each house. As you know if you've watched before, Family Meal is about exploring food from different places and different times to understand how people make awesome food for the time and place they live in. Last month, we looked at Milton Williams' 1981 cookbook, The Party Book. Milton was the caterer to the stars in Hollywood in the 70s and the 80s. He was known for throwing extravagant themed parties with live performances and over-the-top decorations. I used his penchant for innovative parties to make some innovative dishes of my own. I made a delicious grilled pork roulade with a curried fennel stuffing. That episode includes 5 dishes and 8 wine pairings. If you want to see it, click here or look below for the link. In this episode, we're riffing on recipes from Barbara Smith's 1999 cookbook, Rituals and Celebrations. Each month, she gives readers a reason for a ritual or a celebration. It's a great book to look at for Family Meal, especially this month. Her August celebration is the family reunion. I can definitely get into that vibe. If you're at my table or on my Zoom, you're family, and I think these recipes are great for a reunion. Known widely as B. Smith, she was a Renaissance woman in the truest sense of the term. She was a model, restaurateur, and a TV talk show host. She also had a home decor line and a successful series of cookbooks and even a magazine. She got her start as a food writer with a newsletter that described the style and the food of her B. Smith restaurant. The ideas in these newsletters eventually developed into her first cookbook. Today, we're looking at Smith's second cookbook. This book was honored by the James Beard Foundation, Food and Wine Magazine, and the American Library Association. Her writing was clearly resonating. Her writing was popular in the 1990s and 2000s for the same reasons that lifestyle influencers are popular today. Lifestyle writing is a blend of the writer's hobbies and interests. For Smith, that was food, craft, and home decor. Through the curation of the things she loved, she created events that were homey and made people want to return over and over again. Anybody who can do that with food is someone worth learning more about, but don't take my word for it. Make these dishes yourself and tell me what you think. Comment, like, and subscribe so I can see if these recipes resonate with you too. And make sure you hit the bell so you'll be notified of all Winosity's future videos. In the meantime, this month's menu is super tasty. Here's what I'm cooking this month. Who doesn't love crispy chips? The starting dish this month is veggie chips made from carrots, plantains, and sweet potatoes. They're salty, crispy, and very easy to make. We've also got a great seasoning on them. I'll tell you what that is a little bit later. We're pairing these chips with 2 dry rosés. I think rosé goes with herbaceous and flavorful foods. These 3 veggies are just slightly perfumed and fragrant, and so I think the delicate flavors of these veggies will pair nicely with the delicate and almost floral flavors in these wines. This is a great pairing for the hot summer too. You want to start off with lighter flavors because it's a hot day and because you're at the beginning of the meal. The second course this month is a summer salad. It has black-eyed peas, a tomato vinaigrette, and marinated octopus. A black-eyed pea salad is a classic dish. This is an updated version you'll love. The first cuisine I think of when I think octopus is Greek food, so this dish is paired with Tou Assyrtiko. This grape is most common in Greece. This is a floral and spicy white wine. Some say it tastes like ginger. It also has just a hint of saltiness, which should pair well with the seafood. Braised oxtails is the main course this month. It's got a rich red wine sauce that you'll want to savor. Oxtails may not sound like a tasty food, it's just cowtail after all, but it's got a deep umami flavor. This version will be fall off the bone tender and a bit like short ribs. The side dish for this course is a cheesy rice pilau or pilaf. It's a yummy rice risotto. It has a cheesy goodness on its own, but will also soak up all the sauce from the oxtails. This course will be paired with 2 Pinot. Both are from Uruguay. Pinot is known for its bold tannins. I think it's one of the most unique wines in the world, but it's also one of the boldest. Perfect to go with oxtails in my opinion. Dessert this month is quite simple and lighter than some of the other desserts I've served at Family Meal. It's balls of popped barley and corn. I have 2 flavors. I have caramel and I have cheese. You don't want to end a big meal on a heavy note on a hot day. This is my attempt to end lighter. They will be paired with 2 sweet white sparkling wines. One is from New Mexico and the other is from France. Although these are sweet wines, they're also relatively light, a good way to end the meal. There are a lot of veggie chip recipes on the web. Some use dehydrators, others bake the veggies, and still others fry them. My recipe is a hybrid. We're going to do a bit of dehydration and then fry. But the hardest part is the chopping, and even that is assisted by a tool. Cutting the vegetables on a mandolin is the best way to get even and thin slices. Cut the vegetables so you have about 4 to 6 inch pieces. Then you slice them at the 1/16 inch setting on the mandolin. You can cut them again if the chips are too big. Ultimately, you want bite-sized pieces. Soak the slices in cold water for about an hour. This will remove some of the excess starch and help to tenderize them. Next, let the slices dry in the refrigerator uncovered until they are dry to the touch. This might also take an hour. If there's any moisture left, you can pat the vegetables dry with a paper towel. After they're all dry, fry the chips in batches at about 375 degrees. They only need about 2 minutes in the fryer. Let the oil drain off the chips and onto a paper towel for about 15 minutes. Now let's finish these up. I'm topping the chips with a bit of sumac for sourness, some flake salt, and nutritional yeast. They're like cheesy, salty, and vinegar chips. So good. Sometimes I spend some time plating a dish, but in this case, I think simple is better. I'll put them in a bowl and let the natural and vibrant yellow and orange of the fried veggies shine. They're glistening since they're fried, and you can see a few of the spices on there. And for fun, I'll add a little dip for the chips. That's a versatile appetizer you can use at a wine party or other events. This appetizer is being served with 2 rosés. Your first thought might be to serve an oily and crispy dish like this with a white sparkling wine, and that would be a good option too, but I wanted to highlight the aromatic and floral aspects of this dish. That's why I'm going with rosé. Well, also because there's perhaps nothing more refreshing than a cold rosé on a hot summer day. The first rosé is from Portugal and is a bit more substantial. It's got a bit of salinity and grapefruit. The other wine from France has a bit more red fruit flavor and maybe a bit of violet. Let's see if my friends agree that this works or if they think a sparkler would be better.
These you made for the chips are so good. My goodness.
I know, I'm glad there's a lot that can have it during the meal.
It's really good. This is the Rui sauce?
Yeah, the yellow one.
It's got something a little spicy in it too, right?
It has some. It does have a little bit of harissa powder, red pepper powder, and garlic. So it might be a little bit of both of those.
It's really good.
So which is the winner? How many of you say the Mateus?
Me.
Yeah, I agree. I like that one.
I'm not
more.
sure.
I like it. It's a little fruitier.
I like it because it's smoother on the tongue.
Right.
Tastes the alcohol distinctly with the Mateus as well.
Yeah.
I think I prefer this one, the lighter one.
In my opinion, this take on chips and dip is a winner. Pair it with a rosé and it's a perfect poolside snack. I've enjoyed black-eyed peas in several countries: Brazil, Nigeria, France, and of course the United States. My grandmother cooked black-eyed peas quite regularly, and I cook them a few times a year too. This recipe is a combination of Barbara's black-eyed pea salad with a few of the hints from the dish I ate in Paris over 20 years ago. I'm lightening the dish up with a tomato vinaigrette instead of heavier stewed tomatoes. There's also the addition of the octopus. I start by soaking the peas overnight in water. If you have the time, you can let them sprout. This reduces the gassiness. Or you can soak them in water with baking soda. In any event, soaking makes them easier to cook the next day. After rinsing them a few times, all you need to do is cook them for 45 minutes. I want them tender but not mushy. That should be enough time. Also, I'm boiling the peas in chicken stock to give the peas some extra flavor. While the peas are cooking, you can start on the dressing. Chop the shallots and cook in oil until soft. That'll take you about 5 minutes. Add the tomatoes to the pan and cook them for about 4 to 6 minutes. You just want to get the tomato flavor without them completely disintegrating. Okay, let that cool for a bit. After the shallots and tomatoes have cooled, add the remaining olive oil, red wine vinegar, fresh oregano, and salt and pepper to taste. That's your dressing. Okay, let's get some water boiling to blanch the carrots and the peppers. You don't want to cook them all the way through, but you don't want them to be too crispy and raw. 5 minutes in boiling water will do the trick. Then drop them in an ice bath so that they retain some crispness. Next, chop up the octopus into still large but bite-sized pieces. You want to notice when you get a piece of octopus. By the way, I bought this pre-cooked and pre-marinated. Cooking octopus well takes time and even more boiling water, so I opted for the pre-cooked. But feel free to cook your own if you like. Now that everything's ready, we can put it all together. Once the peas are cooked and cooled, mix all of the ingredients with the dressing. Make sure every piece gets a bit of dressing on it. Look at all that color and flavor. That's a summer salad if I've ever seen one. This dish is being served with two Assyrtiko. It's a white wine that I've seen described as savory, which usually means slightly salty. Salty wines pair very well with food. This is a hot climate wine from Greece. You might expect little to no acidity in a hot climate white wine, but that's not true of Assyrtiko. They can remain fresh tasting with high acidity even in very hot years, so it should also be refreshing with this summer salad. Let's see if this pairing makes sense to my friends.
It's better for your tummy if they sprout.
You're less gassy. Your husband will thank you.
That's the nice words. Yeah.
Very good. Brilliant salad.
This black eyed pea recipe is inspired by my trip to Paris when I was hanging out in the Marais, and I had black eyed peas with octopus.
Assyrtikos.
For me, I like the Santorini. It's very smooth.
I think my favorite is the Hermes wine or the Hermes wine.
I think the Hermes has a little more of a round mouthfeel to it.
I prefer the Santorini. I think it's less bitter, maybe.
I think they're both good, honestly.
They are. The Hermes will be a nice cool wine, I think.
If you're looking for a great summer salad, I think this is it. It was enjoyed by all. I'm not sure if oxtail sounds much better than cowtail, but either way, it tastes good. I don't want this to be a stewy dish that eats like a soup, but I do want a really rich sauce. I'll start by getting the onion, celery, and carrots all diced up. Start making a sauce with herbs, liquid, and oil. That smells amazing so far, but I'm really going to pump up the flavor with the spices and dry ingredients. This will all begin to thicken into a sauce. Next, add the chopped vegetables. You can remove these later if you wish, but they add flavor and aroma. Bring the pot to a boil, then reduce to a simmer. Add the cinnamon stick whole. Put all of this into a pressure cooker and cook on high for 45 minutes. Let the pressure release naturally. This will take about 25 to 30 minutes more. After they're cooked, remove the cinnamon stick and remove the aromatics. Add just a bit of vinegar before serving. You want a sauce that completely coats the bottom of the plate. I'll just put these oxtails on a nice plate, then add the rest of the sauce. Finally, add some garnish to the top of the dish. Pilav, pilau, pilaf, and pilau. Different names are used in different parts of the world, and they all have different seasonings and mix-ins, but the base is the same. Rice that is sauteed in fat before cooking it in stock. So that's the first step for this dish. Melt some butter and mix into the rice in a hot skillet. Make sure the rice is well coated and simmer for 10 minutes. This is arborio rice, by the way, short grain rice. You add some stock and get it to simmer. While the rice is simmering, beat the eggs and mix in the herbs, grated cheese, and breadcrumbs. This is where all the flavor is, so be sure you mix everything all together. Now add more water to get the rice creamy. This might take another 30 minutes. Season it at the end. When you plate it, I say put it in a bowl of a contrasting color. You don't want a beige on white scenario, so I'm using this nice shiny black bowl, then throwing in some peas and parsley for crunch and aroma, and a bit of cheese because we're being decadent today. What do you think? This course is paired with Pinot. This grape hails from the southwest of France, but now Uruguay is the most prominent wine region for this varietal. Both bottles we're tasting hail from Uruguay. If you've never had Pinot before, brace yourself. It's intense. It's a full-bodied red with high tannin. If you like this kind of intense wine, enjoy, but I won't think any less of you if you aerate this wine. Besides the tannin, these wines offer flavors like tobacco, coffee, and smoke. Bold red wine drinkers love these flavors, but let's see what my friends think about these wines and the food we served with them.
I've never had oxtail before.
Oh, you never have?
Yeah, my first experience.
The rice is delicious.
It is good.
My first oxtail is good too.
So oxtail reminds me of like an ossobuco,
Yeah.
right?
Falling off the bone, yummy.
That's really good, John. Really good.
Just from smelling, I haven't tasted yet, but they smell very, very strong and
Peppery.
very peppery. Yeah.
Very rich, intense wines.
First taste was delicious.
Mm.
Yeah, that is good.
So I think the Garzon tastes a little more ripe to me. The Pisano tastes a little bit younger, but in a Pinot, that's okay because it's such an intense wine that.
Yeah, the Pisano, I like the nose of it better, but tasting it is much more tight. It's much more tannic.
So I can't decide between these two.
The Garzon's really good. But
I do like the Garzon better.
Garzon.
Yeah,
Garzon.
I think that's the winner.
Well, I'm still a Pinot fan, but the group was split. That's okay. This is about trying new things, and we did that. Our final course today is 2 different flavors of popped grain balls. They're made of corn, and there's a bit of barley thrown in for extra nuttiness. These are pretty simple to make, and even more fun to make. Start by putting 1 tablespoon of oil in a hot skillet. Heat it until lightly smoking. Add grains by the handful to the hot skillet. Roll the grains around in the skillet until they pop. Then rinse and repeat until all the grains are popped. Let the popped grains cool in a paper towel-lined bowl. While the grains are cooling, combine butter, sugar, water, and a bit of salt. This is the syrup that's going to hold the popped kernels together. Cook this mixture on medium-high heat until it boils. You can add any flavorings you like at this point. I'm going to add a bit of Thai basil to half of the syrup, then I'm going to use a caramel sauce today as well. To make the caramel, just cook this sauce a bit longer until it browns a bit. Now I'll put the balls together. First, drizzle each kind of syrup on each kind of grain. Then stir the grains to get them evenly coated. Finally, form a popcorn ball about a tennis ball sized sphere. Then lightly roll through the popped barley to get some of that crunch in there. Now let's plate these. The basil and caramel are done. They're sweet and a bit tangy. I put a bit of cayenne in the caramel, and the Thai basil has a bit of licorice or anise bite. Don't those look great? They're light, sweet, nutty, and crunchy, with 2 flavors to choose from. This crunchy dessert is paired with 2 sweet sparkling white wines. Both have Chardonnay and Pinot Noir, and the French wine also has Pinot Blanc. These are fruity and refreshing sparklers, perfect for summer. Let's see if my friends think these wines go well with their carnival-esque dessert.
Those popcorn balls were really, really good.
Very good.
Popcorn and champagne, though, I think it's a good pairing.
No argument there.
Both these wines are really, really good. I love the French one with that prairie.
I like French.
But I think they're both good.
I agree, though, the French one is better. A little sweeter, which I appreciate with the dessert.
What a great way to end a 4-course meal on a hot day, with a refreshing sparkling wine and a bit of popcorn. So there you have it. I made 5 dishes inspired by B. Smith's 1999 cookbook, Rituals and Celebrations. I made fried veggie chips with dip, a black-eyed pea salad with octopus, red wine braised oxtails, rice pilau, and popped grain balls. I think this cookbook introduced the eaters to food they hadn't had before. The oxtails were definitely new to some, but that's always a fun experience, to try something new. But maybe more importantly, these are all friends I've eaten with before. It was a reunion after not having seen each other for maybe months. It was a great time for a reunion. Maybe you noticed if you've watched before, 2 of my friends have been at all the meals, and they've RSVP'd for the next one. It's become a little tradition for them and for me. I think Mrs. Smith will be glad to hear that. Her book is doing its job. This meal, my new little tradition, takes me about 3 weeks to plan and execute. I have to buy the cookbook, Make the menu, buy the food and the wine, then cook it all and deliver it. It's work, to be honest. And I also build in some buffer time in case something doesn't go according to plan. But I enjoy it. I'm learning a lot from this project. But you don't have to do something as complicated as this. Even a small tradition can have an impact. Make a point to share a few extra herbs from your garden each month, or share a note about a good wine you had. As long as it's something that you enjoy, it'll stick. As for the wines, I'm definitely a Pinot fan, but it's not a wine for the faint of heart. Perhaps it's one of the boldest red wines you can try, but I encourage you to try it if you haven't had wines from Uruguay before, or if you're in the mood to try something new. I also really enjoyed the summery rosé wines with the aromatic vegetables. They were served with some herbaceous dips too, which just lifted the whole course. I think rosé is great with herbaceous and aromatic foods, and I think I'll push on that theme more next month. So that was episode 6 of Family Meal and our wine pairings. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, like and subscribe. Make sure you hit the bell to get notified about upcoming episodes, and don't forget to share Family Meal with your friends. If you want these recipes, you can find them on the blog at winosity.com, where you'll find other food and wine pairings. And you'll also find the Winosity app there, where you can keep track of the good wines you discover out in the world and get wine recommendations based on your preferences. I hope you'll join us in late September for the next episode. I'll be cooking recipes from Abby Fisher's 1881 cookbook, What Mrs. Fisher Knows About Old Southern Cooking. We looked at Rufus Estes' cookbook, Good Things to Eat. This was the first cookbook by an African-American chef. Abby Fisher's cookbook, on the other hand, is the first published cookbook by an African-American, period. By the time she wrote the book, she had 35 years of experience cooking. Fisher ran a pickles and preserves factory in San Francisco and won a number of local awards for her cooking. This is a groundbreaking book about a groundbreaking woman, so I'm so excited to bring it to you next month. Thanks for watching. Bye. You've been planting, tending, and watering all spring and summer. Now's the payoff. It's harvest season. If you need recipes to help you use all that fall abundance, this video is for you. Today is all about soup, pickles, and preserves. Oh my! You can make soup in big batches and freeze it. And canning and pickling can make your veggies and fruit last all winter. Coming up are 5 yummy dishes that will fortify you all winter long. Pair this kind of food with good wine, and what you have is a family meal. Welcome to Family Meal, a virtual wine tasting party. Every month I cook a 4-course meal and pair it with some fun wines. Then you get to watch as my friends tell me what they think about it all. As you know if you've watched before, Family Meal is all about exploring food from different places and different times to understand how people make awesome food for the time and place they live in. Last month we looked at Bea Smith. She was a Renaissance woman in the truest sense of the term. She was a model, restaurateur, and a TV talk show host. She also had a home decor line and a successful series of cookbooks, and even a magazine. Her recipes inspired me to cook food that was fit for a reunion. I made delicious oxtails that will fall off the bone tender. That episode includes 5 dishes and 8 wine pairings. If you want to see it, click here or look below for the link. In this episode, we're looking at recipes from Abby Fisher's 1881 cookbook, What Mrs. Fisher Knows About Old Southern Cooking. This is one of the earliest cookbooks written by a Black person in the United States, and it's truly groundbreaking. So was Rufus Estes' book. You might remember from episode 2 that he was the first Black chef to write a cookbook in 1911. There's some interesting similarities between these 2 books that are worth mentioning. First, they're writing only 30 years apart from each other, Fisher's being earlier. And both were writing from California, Estes in Los Angeles and Fisher in San Francisco. Perhaps most notably though, both Fisher and Estes didn't want to write a book, but both were egged on by their friends and customers. Imagine what would have been lost to history if they hadn't produced these books. It speaks to the power of cheerleaders in our lives, the people who fortify us to do more than we could or would without them. I think the food in Fisher's cookbook has the same power to fortify you through these colder winter months that are coming up. Most copies of Fisher's book were lost during the 1906 earthquake and fire that destroyed 80% of San Francisco, so it went unknown to most of the public until 1984, when a copy resurfaced. On the other hand, the house Fisher owned outright without a mortgage on 17th Street in San Francisco is still standing. Fisher clearly became a prosperous woman through her work, and she was very entrepreneurial. She ran a business, Mrs. Abby Fisher and Company, that manufactured pickles. These weren't just any pickles, these were award-winning pickles. Fisher won 2 awards for them at the 1880 San Francisco Mechanics Institute Fair. She also won an award at the California State Fair. In fact, it was because of her recognition at the State Fair in 1879 that she was asked to write this cookbook. Fisher's book is full of recipes that show her love for soups, pickles, and preserves. But more important is her mastery of the crafts of pickling, canning, and preserving. One judge wrote of her food, her pickles and sauces have a flavor seldom equaled, and once tasted, not soon forgotten. Anybody who can do that with food is someone worth learning more about. But don't take my word for it. Make these dishes yourself and tell me what you think. Comment, like, and subscribe so I can see if these recipes resonate with you too. And make sure you hit the bell so you'll be notified of all Winosity's future videos. All right, on to this month's fortifying menu. We're starting with a canapé. It's got creamy cheese, pickled apple, and onion, and it's wrapped in a pastry crust. I've paired this little bite with 2 very light Muscadet from France. There are a lot of zippy flavors in this course to make the eater's mouths water and get them ready for more food. Second is a spicy and creamy Chow soup. If you don't know what Chow is, I'll tell you a bit later. But if you've ever had Polish dill pickle soup, the flavors are similar. If you've never had dill pickle soup, you might just have to trust me that this is good. This will be served with 2 New World Chenin Blanc. They're a bit grassy, but very fresh and bright tasting. The third course is chicken croquettes with a potato and pickled garlic salad. Potato and pickles are great for overwintering. This salad is one you could make any time of the year, and who doesn't love a crispy fried croquette? This course will be even better with the 2 luscious Washington State Viogniers paired with these dishes. They're from 2 of my go-to wineries up there, so I hope my friends enjoy them. For dessert, there's bread pudding pie. It's a citrusy, bready pudding with a pie crust underneath and some sweet and sour cherry preserves on top. This is a unique take on bread pudding. It's more summery than Christmassy. You'll love it. And it'll be served with a wine cocktail made of bourbon barrel aged red wine and some berry syrup. That sounds great to me. What about you? There are also a few other yummy surprises coming up, so keep watching. Everybody loves finger food. These cheesy canapés have a crispy pastry crust and a mix of apple pickles and onion pickles, in keeping with the theme of this episode, all about pickling. Start by preheating the oven to 350. You can use pre-baked shells, which saves a bunch of time, but if you're feeling adventurous, you can make these with pastry. If you need a crust recipe, see our peach pie recipe, or keep watching for the bread pudding pie recipe. You just need 21 little crusts about 3 inches in diameter. And now I can focus on the custard. Let's start it by making the pickles. This is very easy. Just soak half of the apples and all of the onions in salt and vinegar for 12 hours. Those are your pickles. After that, beat the egg and the milk together. Add some melted brie. This has been chopped and then mic'd for 90 seconds. Mix all of the ingredients together in a bowl with a bit of nutmeg, salt, and pepper. Pour in a bit of pudding mixture into each cup. I have 7 eaters today, so there are 21 cups to fill, 3 each. Then pop those in the oven for 20 minutes until the custard sets. When they're ready, they should be firm and the crust should be crisp and warm. I'll just put those on a nice plate for serving. Boy, are they creamy. You can serve these up at any party, I think. I think this will pair nicely with these French Muscadet. These are fresh and young wines that have a lot of acid, like our pickles, but I describe them as quiet or delicate because they don't hit you in the face with aroma. That's okay though, since there's so much flavor in the canapé. You don't want to clash. And anyway, the fun part of drinking delicate wine is really paying attention to what you're drinking. These wines definitely make you pay attention. Let's see what my friends notice in these delicate wines and our apple and cheese canapés.
That's why they're so good.
Yeah.
They're really good.
Yeah.
It's like a biscuity crust.
Yeah.
Those look kind of classy, don't you think? The wines were classy too, in my opinion. A great combination. Growing up, we ate in Polish restaurants quite regularly. My favorite is Polish Village in Hamtramck, Michigan. The dill pickle soup has been on their menu for over 30 years, so it must be good. Another memory I have from growing up is Chow Chow, a spicy pickled pepper sauce. It sat on many a counter along with the pepper and salt, and I have some in my cabinet right now. Those are my inspirations for this dish. I'm using a spicy pickled pepper relish rather than pickled cucumbers in a creamy soup base. The Chow Chow is similar to the pickled apples in the cheese canapé recipe. It's onions, red peppers, and cabbage that are sliced and brined in vinegar and salt, and a bit of cayenne for 12 hours. To make the soup base, you just need veggie broth and a bit of mashed potato and butter. Season the broth with a bit of dill, salt, and pepper. Just before serving, lower the temperature. Add in the sour cream very slowly so that it doesn't curdle. Now this is ready to plate. To serve the soup, ladle a bit of the base into a nice bowl. Then top each bowl with about a quarter cup of diced potato and another quarter cup of chow chow. This is unlike any soup you've had before. It's creamy, spicy, savory, and has a bit of crunch from the vegetables. You'll want more and more of this soup as the days get colder, and most of these are the kind of ingredients you can have on hand that will last through the winter. We're pairing this soup with 2 Chenin Blanc. One is from South Africa, and the other is from California. The primary flavor I get from this wine is grassiness. It tastes a bit like the way freshly mowed fall grass smells. That's appropriate for fall, right? This wine is fresh tasting, but is slightly heavier than the Muscadet from the first course. We're building things up to the main course. Let's see what my friends think of this unique soup and these fresh wines.
Very good.
Oh God, it's so delicious.
Oh, wow.
There's nothing better than a bowl of creamy soup on a chilly winter day. Fried patties are perhaps the ultimate comfort food. Today, we're doing a pan-fried chicken croquette, but you can substitute any ground meat you like in this recipe. Pork, salmon, and tuna would all be nice treated this way. It's always good to dice up the veg first, the potatoes, onion, and celery. The onions and potatoes need a bit of softening, so saute them until tender. This should only take about 10 minutes. Beat the eggs. You'll add these to the chicken along with some seasoning. Get it well combined and season everything with garlic powder, salt, and pepper. If the dough is getting loose at this point, pop it in the freezer for a few minutes. If the mixture is cool enough, form the mixture into patties. You just put a bit in a ring mold to make the patty. If you don't have a ring mold, wrap several strands of aluminum foil around a highball glass to make one, or just use muffin tins. The next step is to bake them for 25 minutes at 400 degrees until they're cooked through. This is what they look like when baked. Meanwhile, get some oil heated up for frying. There should be enough oil in the pan to come halfway up the patty. While that's heating, set up a breading station with 3 plates. One will have seasoned flour, one will have beaten egg, and the last will have breadcrumbs. Dip each patty in the flour, then egg, then breadcrumbs until coated. This is a mix of breadcrumbs from just what I have around. Fry each patty in hot oil until browned. It will only take 2 to 3 minutes per side. Once the patties are brown, drain them on a paper towel lined pan. Now it's time to plate. That's one of the most appetizing dishes I've seen in a long time. I'll just put them on the plate here with the sauce that goes with them. This is a caramelized onion remoulade, sort of like an aioli. And that's ready to go. And by the way, at the meal we had a potato and pickled garlic salad as our side dish. The perks of being an eater. You can find the link to those recipes below. We're serving this course with 2 Washington State Viogniers. They're on the rich side for white wines. They're pretty high in alcohol for white wines too, but still crisp. They're also very floral wines. That's why just a touch of Viognier is added to some Syrahs. That's right, there was a bit of white wine in that red wine you drank. But back to Viognier. There's also oak notes in these too. Let's see what my friends think.
So I was backwards. I think the Rouleau tastes sweeter to me.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Really?
It's got kind of a almost close to smoky after you swallow.
I'm a big Washington wine fan. You should check these out. If you love bread pudding, you'll love this bread pudding pie. Its primary flavor is orange, so it's not like your typical bread pudding. It's also got crust. Leave it to Mrs. Fisher to innovate. The bread is crumbed rather than diced, so the texture is smoother than your typical bread pudding. You add milk, orange juice, and zest to make the filling. The last ingredient is 4 beaten egg yolks. This all gets mixed together well. Wasn't that easy? The crust is easy too. The ratio is 4 parts flour to 1 part butter to 1 part water. That's just enough water to make a dough. I add a dash of salt too. If you use 1 cup of flour and do the ratios, that should be a large enough pie crust for this dish, with some left over in case of a mistake. You can pop this into the fridge for a few minutes to let things firm back up. Once you have a dough, roll it out to about 1/8 inch thick and place it into your pie pan. Add the filling and you're ready to go. Bake this at 350 degrees for 30 minutes until the pudding is firm. And this is what it looks like after it's done. It almost looks like a sweet potato or pumpkin pie, but the texture is more like a pudding than a custard. Mrs. Fisher added meringue to her pie. We're doing cherry preserves. I'm going to put a nice layer of that on top of the pie, and it's ready to serve. By the way, that cherry preserves recipe is below too. The pie is being served with a wine cocktail. That's right, I said wine cocktail. This drink uses red wine that's been aged in a bourbon barrel for a short time. It's got that vanilla or caramel flavor from the charred barrel and a liquor residue in addition to dark fruit flavors. It's a very rich wine you might enjoy on its own if you like drinking big reds. We're going to add a sweetened berry syrup to it. Here's how you make the syrup. Just heat 4 cups of mixed berries with 1 cup of sugar. It's very concentrated since we're not adding any liquid other than what's in the berries. Once you've extracted the juice from the berries, let the syrup cool, then strain the berries out. Add about 1 ounce or 2 tablespoons of syrup to a regular pour of wine. I think the cherry preserves and this berry flavor in this rich red wine will go together nicely. But let's get the eaters' opinions.
The wine and the syrup is so good together. Oh my gosh.
Is there lemon in your bread pudding?
Orange.
Orange. Oh.
This is the cherry.
And the citrus with this cocktail.
Thanks, Mrs. Fisher, for a great meal. So there you have it. I made 5 dishes inspired by Abby Fisher's 1881 cookbook, What Mrs. Fisher Knows About Old Southern Cooking. I made cheese and pickled apple canapes, spicy chow chow soup, chicken croquettes, bread pudding pie, and a bourbon barrel-aged red wine cocktail with blackberries. There's a lot you can say about people's lives. You can tell many stories based on the events they experienced. But I'm most interested in the story the cookbook author wants to tell you in their book. The best cookbooks speak to more than just how to make a dish. In this book, Mrs. Fisher is talking about encouragement. That's something allies do when they see it's necessary. In this case, they didn't wait until she asked. They encouraged her before she even knew she needed it. And look at the result. We're still benefiting from it today, 139 years later. Talk about allyship. Their words and encouragement helped spur Mrs. Fisher to write this book, and I'm feeling grateful for that today. As for the food, there were a lot of yum faces this month. What's a yum face? It's when the food is so good that you forget you're with other people and you make a funny face. I consider a yum face the highest of compliments. This soup is a winner. Just pickled cabbage and potatoes in a creamy veggie broth. It's super easy and super good. The pie is also stellar. One eater said the texture was just heavenly. It's sweet, but also has some tartness from the sour cherry preserves on top. Many people thought the wines they tasted were sweet this month. All of them are actually dry, but sometimes really fruity wines can come off as sweet, especially when you're eating sour pickled things like we were this month. Kurt and Vicky over at Rouleau Winery are stellar folks. Anything you can get your hands on by them, do it. But Kurt's French Rhone wines are exceptional, as was this Viognier we had today. It was fruity and crisp and delightful with a fried croquette. I've also got to give a shout out to Soren at Bonsu Winery. His wines are some of the most intensely grapey wines I've ever had. If you really want to know what a grape tastes like, drink one of Soren's wines. His Viognier today was a really powerful wine. So that was episode 7 of Family Meal and our wine pairings. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, like and subscribe. Make sure that you hit the bell to get notified about upcoming episodes. And don't forget to share Family Meal with your friends. If you want these recipes, you can find them on the blog at winosity.com, where you'll find other food and wine pairings. And you'll also find the Winosity app there, where you can keep track of the good wines you discover out in the world and get wine recommendations based on your preferences. I hope you'll join us in late October for the next episode. I'll be cooking recipes from Jessica Harris's 1989 cookbook, Iron Pots and Wooden Spoons. This cookbook makes direct links between dishes Black folk make in Africa to the dishes we make here in America. Harris is an English professor at Queens College in New York and has written 12 cookbooks. She also founded the Institute for the Study of Culinary Cultures at Dillard University. We've touched some dishes with very clear African roots in this series, such as okra salad, black-eyed pea salad, and peanut soup. But we're getting into the deep cuts next month. I'm excited to explore more heritage dishes with you next month. Thanks for watching, folks. Bye. Coming up are 8 stellar wines paired with 5 tasty dishes with African roots. These dishes are savory, creamy, hearty, and sweet. You'll love these diasporic deep cut recipes, inspired by Jessica Harris. Pair this kind of food with good wine, and what you have is a family meal. Welcome to Family Meal, a virtual wine tasting party. Every month I cook a 4-course meal and pair it with some fun wines. Then you get to watch as my friends tell me what they think about it all. In this series, we've prepared dishes with clear African roots, such as okra salad, black-eyed pea salad, and peanut soup. By the way, you can click the links to see those recipes. But today, we're digging into the deep cuts, looking at the African roots of 5 dishes people eat in North America, and we're pairing them with rosé. The recipes are inspired by Jessica Harris's 1989 cookbook, Iron Pots and Wooden Spoons, which traces the ways African cuisine has migrated to the New World and has been transformed here. I'm calling this episode Deep Cuts partly because of Harris herself. She's perhaps the Black foodie's foodie, the foodie that other foodies look up to. She's not as well known as B. Smith from 2 episodes ago, but her recipes come with stories as tasty as the food you can make with them. You can't beat that. These are the deep cuts of Black food, perhaps. The breadth of dishes she claims under the umbrella of African cuisine, with scholarly acumen by the way, includes everything from ackee fruit to Zwazo chilies, from cold weather saffron to tropical mango. Yes, the Black celebration plate dishes are covered in this book, but they sit with 200 other recipes that are also gems, even if less well known. Harris is an English professor at Queens College in New York and has written 12 cookbooks. She's written about everything from spicy food to rum drinks. And she has a podcast that's a great listen. Pour yourself a glass of wine and settle in. Her voice is poised and pleasant, and her stories evoke the breath and heartbeat of the places she explores. The very first episode is about New Orleans, which happens to be my grandmother's city of birth. One of the dishes I'm making today is inspired by that city, and by Dr. Harris's take on it, but more on that later. Harris's mother took young Jessica to West Africa for the first time in 1972. There she encountered yassa chicken, a dish that's familiar even though she was far from home. Looking for connections like these is at the center of her writing. She's looking for ways to connect me to the food in the books, in the same way yassa chicken connected her to Africa. So that's what I looked for in the recipes in this book, ones that I felt connected to, had experienced in some way. Then I added my spin to these dishes. We'll see if it worked. Here's what's on the menu this month. I think of Hush Puppies not as a celebration food, but as a special occasion food. They're the little bite you have on any Friday when you need a treat. I hope my friends think they're a treat. These crispy fritters are stuffed with cheese and herbs so that they have that classic crispy outside, creamy inside combination that everyone loves. The wines for this pairing are two Cremant d'Alsace from the north of France. These are both very light wines, sparkling rosé Pinot Noir. Anything deviled is super tasty. Deviled eggs, deviled crab, even deviled nuts make my mouth water. Course 2 today is deviled ham tea sandwiches. They're creamy, spicy, porky, and even a little bit sweet. I've paired two still rosés from northern Italy with this course. They're both Corvina dominant wines. Corvina is one of my favorite grapes. I think they'll be nice with the creaminess of the ham salad. Course 3 is a hearty stew. This is a mashup dish with influences from Macroix to New Orleans to my backyard. It has lots of greens, a savory broth, some dumplings to soak up the sauce, and a mix of duck and seafood. I'm excited to try it. The stew will be served with two tavles from the Rhône region in France, just across from Châteauneuf-du-Pape. They're Grenache and Cinsault, lighter grapes, but the grapes are treated in a way that makes for a pretty hefty rosé, so I'm hoping that goes well with the stew. The sweet course is a praline. Well, can you call it a praline if there's no pecan? In any event, these pralines have mango leather, melagetta peppercorn, and pumpkin seeds. We'll see what the eaters think about that. Two sweet Brichetto finish off the tasting this month. They're both from Piemonte, Italy. This is a sweet sparkling wine that I'm expecting to taste like flowers and candy, so it should pair well with the candied sugar dessert I'm serving. I'm very excited to share these heritage dishes with you and my friends, so keep watching. I don't know about you, but Hush Puppies are usually served with fish in my experience, and there's a history there. That pairing is about 120 years old in the Carolinas, according to some. We're having fish in course 3. I'll give the eaters enough to have some for both courses. But why not enjoy these little bites as a starter with some bubbly? That's what we're doing today. They're easy enough to get started. Combine the dry and sifted ingredients in a large bowl. Make sure that they're mixed thoroughly. In another bowl, combine the egg and buttermilk. You want it to be as close to one solid color as possible, with no discernible yolk left. As you might have guessed, now we put the wet and dry stuff together. It's going to be a gloopy batter, a bit thicker than a pancake batter, and gritty from the cornmeal. While the dough is resting, dice the cheese into even bits. Then start warming up the cheese until it just begins to get soft. Now make a dough ball with about a teaspoon of dough. Then flatten that dough ball with the bottom of a glass. Then put some cheese and a few herbs in the center and wrap the dough around the stuffing. The final step is frying. Put some oil in a skillet and heat it to about 375 degrees. That's hot enough for a popcorn kernel to pop. Then fry each dough ball until brown and crispy. Let the fritters drain on a paper towel. Now they're ready to serve. I put this on a plate with some lemon wedges and a few herbs on top. Don't you want to dig into those? I've also got a freshly made hot sauce to go with them. It's spicy and vinegary. It's also got some papaya juice and herbs for freshness. If you want that recipe, it's on the blog too. So the fritters are being served with Cremant d'Alsace from the north of France. Wines from wine regions with cool summer nights like this tend to be delicate and crisp. This is also a fully sparkling wine. They're made from Pinot Noir, a thin-skinned grape, so they don't have a lot of drying tannin in the mouth. To make this wine, whole bunches of grapes, skins, stems, seeds, and all, are just lightly pressed. The light touch with the press also makes for a lighter juice. These wines have some color, but they're still light with a refreshing, bright raspberry flavor. Let's see if my friends think this bubbly rosé goes well with these crispy fritters.
I like
it. I keep going back.
No,
No,
it's kind of,
it's
it has a
good.
really good flavor.
I'm sweating a little bit. So I don't know which one I like better.
They're very similar to me.
I like the Albrecht.
I like Albrecht also.
I like them both, really.
I like the and.
So I'm convinced Hush Puppies are definitely an appetizer-worthy dish, made all the better with a bit of bubbly. So one theory is that deviled food is just red food. Normally that red comes from paprika. This recipe has paprika, but also onion, pear, and pine nuts. While the nuts and fruit add crunch, the ham has to be spreadable, so process the ham into a chunky puree in a food processor. From there, add the remaining ingredients: diced pear, pine nuts, mayonnaise, relish, garlic powder, and of course paprika. Mix that well to combine everything. Now you're ready to make the sandwich. This is flax bread that I made. Fresh bread is the perk of being an eater, but the recipe is also on the blog. I'm just going to cut this in half. Add a bit of horseradish spread to each side of the bread. Then add a few leaves of basil to cover the lower side of the bread. The ham spread is next. About 2 tablespoons will cover the bread. All you need now is the top half. I'm going to cut this in half, but you can cut these sandwiches into thirds or even quarters. Yes, you can buy ham spread in a little tin, but that tastes like it came out of a little tin. This spread is smoky and salty and has a light sweetness from the pear and crunch from the pine nuts. Add fresh basil and fresh bread, and you have a sandwich worthy of a wine party. The wines for these are 2 Corvina blends. When people say fresh wine, the first grape I think of is Corvina. It's got lip-smacking tartness and fresh cherry for days. The rosé we're having will be lighter than a red Corvina, which is perfect for a light and creamy ham salad. Both wines are from Verona in northern Italy. This region's weather is influenced by the nearby Alps, but also the large bodies of water nearby. It's cool there, but warmer than Alsace, so these wines will be fuller tasting, a step up from the previous course. They're a very light pink and have a fresh flavor to match, strawberries and citrus. I'm a Corvina fan, but what about today's eaters? Let's see.
Very smooth Pasqua.
Yeah, they're both really interesting.
Lovely.
I know it's called deviled ham, but that was pretty angelic in my opinion, and paired well with the fruity rosé. I think these wines were among the faves too. This recipe was inspired by green gumbo, a New Orleans classic, but since this episode is about connecting New World foods to Africa, we're going back a bit. The mother dish for gumbo is dishes like kantomire, a stew of pureed greens and other vegetables. It's usually served with fufu, a starchy dumpling. I had kantomire in Ghana almost 10 years ago now, but I still remember how savory and satisfying it was. That's the kind of flavor I'm going for today. Today, I'm making a stew of peppers and onions and serving it with greens from the garden and some yuca fufu. I'm using the kale, collards, and sweet potato leaves that are growing in the back. I don't like chomping down on a tough stem, so I'm cutting those out. Those get cooked for 3 to 4 hours on low heat in a crock. You don't need meat or even fat in these. I'm just adding some veggie bouillon and a lot of vinegar. The stew is also simple. It's pureed onions and peppers. The puree is cooked down with some palm oil and a Creole-inspired spice blend. Start out with your pot on high heat so the oil gets hot and fries things a bit, and let it finish up at a simmer. Next is the duck. I'm using breasts today. Make a crosshatch on the skin and season the duck well. Sear the breasts, skin side down for 10 minutes to get the skin crisp. Then finish these in the oven at 400 for about 10 minutes until cooked. The last component is the seafood. This is frozen mixed seafood that just goes in hot water for about 5 minutes until the shrimp shells turn pink and the bivalves open. If you're having stew, you must have fufu. This is fermented water fufu. To start, this frozen yuca gets soaked for 4 days. This softens and ferments it. On day 4, puree it up. Add water until you have a paste. Get it as smooth as you can. Now cook the paste until it becomes a translucent dough. You can adjust the thickness by adding water. Mine was still a bit chunky, so I strained it in a sieve. It made for a really silky fufu. But it's probably too thin to eat with your hands. Traditionally, fufu is used to pick up bits of stew with your hands, but all my friends are fork users, so I'm okay. Now it's time to plate. Put a bit of stew in the middle and surround it with the accompaniments. That looks like something to dig into, right? There's so many flavors in this. Sour, savory, herby, and meaty. It's all here. I'm serving this stew with 2 Tavel from the Rhone region of France. I love Rhone grapes. They're some of my faves. These rosés are made from Grenache and Cinsault, 2 grapes common to the area. But these aren't the light rosés you might be used to. One wine was almost like drinking brandy, even though these wines aren't fortified. There's grapefruit and flowers and a hint of vanilla. These are intense wines with lots of oak and an intense salmon color. One is even a bit tawny, like it's aged, even though it's just 3 years old. I wonder what the panel will say about these unique wines.
That tastes, it's a little syrupy to me, that one.
The Gruyere?
Yeah.
Yeah, it feels kind of thick on the tongue, but I like the flavor.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And it's slightly darker. I don't know if that has anything to do with it. But.
For me, these Tavel were like reading a good book of poetry. You have to sit and think for a moment after each poem. What did I just read? What did that mean? But not everyone likes poetry, unless you have food with it. Can you call something a praline if there's no pecan? Oh well, I'm going for it anyway. I'm making candy today. It's got dried papaya, pumpkin seeds, and Muscadet peppercorns in it. I picked these ingredients because I thought they'd taste nice together. Tropical sweetness from the papaya, citrus and herbs from the pepper, and crunch from the seeds. A mix of flavors and textures. But these ingredients to me represent the diaspora of African-derived people's food. You don't get more American than the pumpkin. Muscadet pepper is an important spice in a lot of West African cooking. And papaya is now found all over the tropics, as are black people. And all that is wrapped in a praline. You can't get more diasporic than that. To make the praline, add sugar, butter, brown sugar, and milk to a pot. Heat it over medium heat to 200 degrees. You can use a candy thermometer to verify the temp. Now add half of the mix-ins. By the way, the papaya leather was dried in a food dehydrator at 125 degrees for 6 hours. But you can also dry them in the sun covered with a cloth or in the oven on the lowest setting for 12 hours. After the liquid candy gets to 240 degrees, take it off the heat and pour it onto a pan to let it cool. I'm going to add the rest of my mix-ins now. After it cools enough to handle it, shape it however you like. I'm making cubes using a silicone ice tray. That was easy, wasn't it? And look how pretty that looks, with a bit of clotted cream on top and a piece of papaya leather, a dainty diasporic dessert if there ever was one. By the way, the clotted cream recipe is on the blog too. The final wines for today are 2 Brichetto from the Piemonte region of Italy, about 3 hours southeast of the Rhone Valley, where our last wines came from. They're sweet and sparkling wines, made from the Brachetto grape. They're almost a fluorescent pink in color. And boy, do they give you strawberry and just a hint of citrusy acid. They're sweet enough to stand up to the candy, which is perfect, but they're light-bodied wines, so not too syrupy. Let's see if the eaters are feeling the Brachetto.
Ooh, this one's very sweet, the Stella. I think I like Orsola with this dessert.
Okay.
I think those were some fun wines to end our rosé journey this month. So there you have it. I made 5 dishes inspired by Jessica Harris's 1989 cookbook, Iron Pots and Wooden Spoons. I made stuffed cornmeal fritters, deviled ham salad sandwiches, a vegetable stew with greens, duck, and seafood, fermented water fufu, and a papaya and peppercorn praline. Harris is a writer first and foremost. She wants to tell you the story of food and about how certain crops and animals become important ingredients and how those ingredients become important dishes. I can use her stories to fill out my own, like having hush puppies at a Friday night fish fry as a kid, having cantomire in Accra 10 years ago, and now straining water fufu by hand in 80-degree weather. The texture was worth it, by the way. In any event, Harris is talking about heritage in her book. These recipes are a cultural inheritance. They're an inheritance for me personally as a black person, but also to everyone in America. This country wouldn't be as tasty a place without hush puppies, gumbo, and pralines, don't you think? There's culture in everything humans do and make, but the culture around food, around nourishment, seems particularly important to me. These dishes don't just fill the belly, they fill an afternoon with good cheer, good conversation, and good flavors. One of today's eaters said the stew today was the best dish of all episodes so far. I'll take it. So if there's any dish you want to try, start with that one. It's a great representative of the culture, and it's super tasty. And it's healthy. It's mostly vegetables with a few pieces of meat for interest. It's an herbaceous, veggie-forward dish that's easy to make. And if you're used to canned spreadable ham, this recipe is a different dish altogether. It's more complex, but not complicated to make. As for the wines, I really enjoyed Rosé Month. We started in the far north in Alsace and ended up as far south as the Piemonte. On our north to south journey, we stopped in Bardolino for a Chiaretto. It was delicious and highly recommended. A lot of the eaters enjoyed the Pasqua 11. It's fruity and fresh, but complex enough to go with a ham sandwich. The other wine that was a revelation for me was the Tavo. The Priore Montezarge was truly stellar. I think the bottle we had was maybe a bit oxidized, but that's okay. Tavos can age from what I understand. And if that's what they taste like when they age, more please. I hope you'll join us in late November for the next episode. It'll be Thanksgiving, turkey season. So this next episode will be about what I'm giving thanks for after 8 episodes of this project. Over these past 8 months, we've explored 57 wines, 44 dishes, and 8 interesting cooks. That's definitely something to give thanks for. I'll be talking about all the stuff I wish I had time to say in past episodes but didn't get to. I'll also be talking about what I've heard from you so far. Thanks for watching. Bye.